Hi there and welcome to Wine Searcher. Today I'm having a look at a Grand Cru Burgundy. This particular one is a Corton. So this is Clos du Chateau, which is from Chateau Corton C, a relatively new producer. So what are we looking at here? With Corton as a Grand Cru, Grand Crus make up about the top 1% of Burgundy's wines. They're from specific delineated vineyards, and yields are kept incredibly low, and then in terms of production you'll find the wines are made with high degrees of selection. They'll age for longer than sort of village or Premier Cru wines, and they'll probably spend a lot a higher proportion will spend time in new oak aging, so you'll have all those influences. Clos du Chateau is an individual Ludi, so a defined vineyard within the Corton Grand Cru, because it's quite a large Grand Cru. For the producer to put the name of the Ludi on the label, they have to the wine has to come entirely from that vineyard. This is a monopole, meaning that Chateau Corton C own the whole of this, quite small vineyard there, which happens to be just in front of their estate. The name Corton C it's a fairly new domain. The Frey family, Jean-Jacques Frey, Swiss billionaire, with his daughter Caroline, bought the estate in 2014 and set about revitalising. It was previously known as Corton Andre, and although a beautiful setting of a lovely chateau, perhaps the wines were not the most inspiring. And what they've done is they bought 7 hectares of vineyard to go with this, of 50 that the previous owners had, and they've gone through a process of renewing the cellars. They completely rebuilt them with beautiful thermoregulated concrete tanks. Everything was done in a way that was as ecologically friendly as possible. There was lots of insulation. Temperature regulation is done by means of a ground source heat pump. So everything's to try and make sure that it's as environmentally friendly as possible. So that was the first step, and the next step was to convert the vineyards to organic viticulture, something that started in 2018. So this is the second year in which they've been using those practices in the vineyard, and they're also working towards becoming biodynamic, but they should be certified as organic in 2021, they hope. Corton as itself, a large Grand Cru, actually in the Côte de Beaune. Most of the Grand Cru reds come from the Côte de Nuit. Tends to have a fairly sort of robust style with plentiful tannin, and be quite solid. The Clos du Chateau is at the bottom of the hill, making it sort of one of the less weighty wines there, sort of a combination of red clay and stone, making it fairly free draining, making the wine slightly more elegant than is typical, supposedly. Let's have a look, shall we? First of all, we've got a beautiful colour there. Really quite a dark red, but not deep. You can see through the wine quite easily. The aromas are really quite restrained. There are red fruits in there, maybe a touch of raspberry, a little bit of high-toned cherry, touches of mulberry, plum, that sort of thing. But then at the end of the aromas, there's an earthiness, almost notes of truffles, that are quite attractive, but just sort of take the roundness off the fruit. Tasting it, it's beautifully concentrated without being too weighty. Again, you've got those lovely, attractive, fresh red fruits. There's good acidity. It's not sharp, but it makes the fruit lovely and fresh. And then you get those sort of earthy, truffly notes coming through. There's a sort of a high ripeness note, almost sort of slightly like bitter licorice coming in as well, towards the end. There's no obvious new oak vanilla note, although there's a slight grip to the tannins at the end that suggests it's there. But this is a very harmonious wine. It's got lovely fruit concentration. The flavours are just lasting beautifully. Alcohol wise, the alcohol's quite warm. The bottle says 14%. I can believe that. It might even be a tiny touch higher. It could be sort of slightly above 14 and still say that on the label. But that doesn't stand out as an alcohol burn. It just adds weight and richness to the finish. And the finish is sort of continuing. It's got nice complexity. Those sort of red fruits and those spicy notes are showing themselves there. It's a very young wine, but you know, quite harmonious, nicely together now, and I suspect may age beautifully. Price-wise, I think, although I'm not so sure that the 2019 is readily available. I was sent this bottle to review by Caroline Frey. These wines, it's a lovely vintage, but in very small, available only in very small quantities because of the some frost and hail damage early in the season that reduced crop sizes. I mean, standard, you'd expect this to be about $170 US. I can imagine the 2019 might be more expensive and might be more difficult to find, but certainly a wine that is drinking very nicely, and it shows potential to, you know, such lovely concentration and attractive flavours that this will age nicely. Not a producer I'd come across before, and really quite a nice introduction to their wines. So cheers everybody.